At the Chicago School, our mission is to educate the next generation of change makers in that innovative theory and culturally competent practice to strengthen what? The integrated health of individuals, organizations, and communities. So nowhere is that mission more viable or visible than in the work of reentry. We recognize that community safety is not achieved through just monitoring folks alone. It is achieved when we address the social and behavioral gaps that lead to recidivism. Tonight, we're bringing you a dual perspective look at how that actually happens in the field. In part one, we're going to be joined by Dave Wolfsgruber, the Deputy Director of Adult Services with the Los Angeles County Probation Department. Dave oversees evidence-based strategies for one of the largest supervision agencies in the world. He's going to talk to us about the shift from traditional monitoring to more modern practices that prioritize risk reduction and long-term success. And in part two, we're going to look at the clinical side of the equation. Bob Dorshimer, CEO of Mile High Behavioral Healthcare, will join us, and he's going to detail what we call the behavioral health bridge. Bob will explore how integrated care, including substance use treatment and medication-assisted treatment, serves as the primary engine for stabilizing lives. This is that rare opportunity to see the clinical side of community justice. And because this is our final session, I want to remind you that the participation in this week carries a lot of weight. If you've watched the others by completing this final briefing tonight, whether you were here live or watching the recording, you have fulfilled the requirements of the NextGen Justice Practitioner Micro-Credential. This badge issued by Credly is a testament to your commitment to an interdisciplinary evidence-based approach to justice. You'll receive an email in the next few days with more information. So let's begin our final briefing. Please join me in welcoming our first guest, Dave Wolfsgruber. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Chris, thank you. And I'll say for fellow West Coasters, good afternoon. Good evening to those on the East Coast. I see we have folks all over the place and in the Central Zone. And I see we have someone from London. So as we're approaching midnight in London, I hope I keep you awake and I don't push you into the slumber land. So I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to give a quick overview. And I also, I really prefer, and I know the nature of this doesn't allow for interactive discussion. I really prefer interactive discussions, but not always possible. So I'm going to leave some time at the end, and I'm going to stay on after the next presenter to answer any questions anyone has. So bear with me as I start this process, but I think it's important to begin where we all should look as criminal justice practitioners, and that's three words that I actually despise after hearing it misused for 25 years, but it's the term of art that we use in criminal justice, and that's evidence-based practices. So I'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll move into EBP, and then I'll give you some practical realities and how, particularly in New Jersey, we put evidence-based practices in play, I would say starting around 2005 and the 20 some odd years that I remained in New Jersey. So I left New Jersey as the executive director, spent 38 great years there, had the opportunity to work with a lot of great professionals, including Chris when he was there. Left as the executive director, oversaw the sworn and civilian staff of about 650. Then went to Colorado, spent 2 years as director of parole for the Colorado Department of Corrections. And as Chris mentioned, my current position is the deputy director of supervision for the Los Angeles County Probation Department. And we also operate juvenile halls and camps. I'll really focus on New Jersey because that's the crux of my presentation. But I want to start with evidence-based practices and the 8 key elements. And bear with me, this is a little dry, but it's important that students and practitioners fully understand the tenets of evidence-based practices, which in its basic premise is the utilization of scientific research and data to reduce recidivism and improve public safety. That's very simply stated, but that is what's distilled from evidence-based practices. The first is assess actuarial risk and needs, and there's 8 key elements within EBP, and that's the first. And to me, the most important to start with, to utilize a risk assessment instrument that's been validated, that's been studied rigorously, and also normed, if possible, to the population for which you're applying it to, whether it's a Department of Corrections, probation, parole, supervising entity, and then also whether it's tailored to gender specific for the female population, as well as the juvenile population that various entities provide services. And then, of course, we have certain organizations that are blended and kind of oversee all of that, including probation and parole. What do I mean by actuarial risk and needs? The level of service inventory revised, which was our tool of choice in New Jersey. The level of service case management inventory, which is the responsivity tool that's utilized currently in LA probation for individuals that are either sentenced to probation, or for those of you on the West Coast know a small little bill that was passed in 2011 known as AB 109, which was the U.S. Supreme Court's pressure to depopulate an overcrowded prison system. So a lot of those folks come to us in probation. We have about 5,000 of them under supervision in LA probation. And those are individuals that haven't committed a serious violent crime or a sexual-based offense. So we use the LSCMI for that population. In Colorado, at the Department of Corrections, we have a lot of great work. I think most of you should know. If you don't, you need to read about the late, great Dr. Ed Latessa out of Ohio, he and his team developed the Ohio Risk Assessment System, or ORAS, which we used in Colorado, both in prison and for individuals under supervision. And honestly, we had issues with fidelity that I know my successors, I started work with our staff. I know my successor is working on that as well, to make sure all of our staff are retrained and to ensure that those risk assessments are conducted with fidelity, and it has to be consistent across all spectrums and all individuals, whether it's prison staff or parole staff that are conducting the LSIRs. So we had a challenge in Colorado years ago with our pre-release, and now we've overcome that, and now we're kind of moving to parole to make sure those folks are properly trained. The next is to really target your interventions, the risk needs responsivity model, which is tailoring your interventions to individual learning style, motivation, and abilities. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's a targeted, I hate to reuse that word, but it's the best for the moment, is to make sure we're laser focused on the individual needs of our clients, regardless of the level of supervision, regardless of whether it's a prison setting and we're looking at prison programming, or it's parole or probation supervision or community placement, to ensure that our programs tailor their interventions to the individual needs of the client. The next item is enhance intrinsic motivation, which is to utilize motivational interviewing. So in New Jersey, quite often, a visit to a parole office or a home visit until about 2007, 2008 was kind of a checklist. Obviously, we had more evolved officers that were, whether they knew it or not, expressing motivational interviewing techniques, But the generic supervision was, you've been arrested, working, still living at the same residence, using drugs, what kind of problems you're having. It was kind of very closed-ended. Yes, no. It really didn't give an opportunity to have the individuals express what's going on in their life, what their needs are, peer associations, who they're spending time with in their leisure activities, the criminogenic factors that we needed to look into. It was very closed-ended. And then we introduced motivational interviewing, and kind of like across the country, motivational interviewing peaked and then valleyed. So there's not been a lot of sustainability, particularly in the organizations that I was with. New Jersey implemented it, and then for a variety of reasons that I won't get into at this moment, we kind of went away from it. And we're hopeful that the training the officers received would stay with it and not involve having them taped and recorded, and that became a kind of an issue. But by introducing it and making sure that our staff got away from very closed-ended yes/no answers, almost an interrogation, it allows us to fully understand the person in front of us beyond the elements that we think we need to make sure we're properly supervising. And as the top of the pyramid item for us is public safety, making sure that the public is safe. So that was kind of, I'd say, from the inception of parole till about the mid 2005, 2007 is when we kind of had a foothold there. And that really made a difference. And while the training may have stopped, the concepts remained, and we really got away as an organization from the narrow yes/no answers to the questions that we were posing to the individuals under our supervision. The next item is skill train with directed practice, and that is huge in that it utilizes cognitive behavioral techniques to teach new skills and behaviors. So those of you that have had either professionally or in your education a introduction to CBT techniques such as moral recognition therapy, which is increasing moral reasoning, improving decision making, and creating positive identity. Rational emotive behavioral therapy, replacing irrational dysfunctional beliefs with rational constructive ones to foster emotional stability. And then, of course, we have thinking for a change, which I think most, if not all, correctional organizations use in prison settings for the individuals in their care to change the thought process for folks that are in carceral settings. Increasing positive reinforcement is enormous because, again, I'll say nationwide, because I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of criminal justice organizations, professional organizations, and individual criminal justice systems, whether they be departments of corrections, probation departments, or parole agencies throughout the country. We did a horrible job in the way we supervised, the way we spoke to individuals. Positive reinforcement should always be at least a 4-to-1 ratio to encourage behavioral change. Who doesn't like hearing that they've done well, even if it's a small accomplishment? And we need to understand that the individuals that are in our care, custody, or supervision haven't experienced a lot of positivity in their lives. And this is not a pat on the back. This is not soft on crime. This is really just understanding that we have an obligation to build these individuals up after they've been torn down their entire lives. I see it as our responsibility, and quite frankly, parole malpractice if we don't increase positive reinforcement with the folks we're dealing with, no matter how small the accomplishment may be, whether it's applying for a job, you don't have to wait till the person gets a job, whether it's reunifying with a loved one that they've been estranged from for a long time, whether it's enrolling in school. We need to ensure that we celebrate their successes. Doesn't mean we're not holding them accountable, but we need to ensure that at every opportunity, we're building those individuals up. Individuals have low self-esteem. A lot of individuals have behavioral deficits that they really need with the challenges they're facing, not just life, but in their daily lives of independent living. Some of our folks have never lived independently. So, this sounds really kind of low on the priority scale, but an individual that puts a bag up, and I've experienced this because we've run programs for seriously and persistently mentally ill individuals, putting a bag of popcorn in for 2 minutes and making themselves a simple meal in a microwave is an accomplishment. Engage ongoing support. So we need to utilize our community-based resources and support systems to reinforce rehabilitation. Measure relevant processes, documenting and measuring data such as assessment results and recidivism rates to ensure quality and track outcome. That's enormous in that we think we're doing a great job. We're living in a vacuum or in a controlled environment where we're not really looking outside. So, hey, we're doing a great job. Well, not really, because it's the fox watching the hen house saying we're doing a great job. So I've always advocated for, at all levels, I didn't have to wait till I became executive director of the agency to make sure that we're using outside providers, outside research universities. We use Pew Charitable Trusts, the Brennan Center, Rutgers University School of Criminal Justice. Let them tell us and let them measure how we're doing. And then we'll realize the reality of whether or not we're effective, not just in terms of reducing recidivism, but are we improving the elements of the individuals that are in our either custody or care and under supervision? Are we just getting them a quick hit job at a fast food restaurant and not pursuing a career through our community-based resources and our relationships with state departments and agencies to make sure that we're supporting those individuals, not just with a $15 an hour job where they're right back at it because they can't afford the ridiculous rents in some areas, and then they lose their housing, and then it's a spiral. So it's really measuring how effective we are, not just in getting a job, but getting a quality job and a career that individual, A, can be proud of, B, can support their family, and C, can make sure that they're on a path to success for the future where they've got something to build upon. Provide measurement feedback. So another overused term, but I'll throw it out anyway, a data feedback loop to inform staff and improve practice. And then we need to assess actuarial risk and need using a validated tool to determine the risk of reoffending. And it's vitally important to connect those individuals to community resources, substance use and behavioral health. So I'll talk about the because it's the most robust in my career, and that's the fact that we did a woefully inadequate job of connecting folks to substance use treatment. We had about 12 outpatient providers and a handful of residential providers. We went from 12 to about 250 separate providers by obtaining funding from the legislature and putting that money into action, working with our partners at the New Jersey Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, under Human Services. So we also had to change the hearts and minds of the folks providing that treatment. As you can imagine, in parole, we have some heavy hitters. We have some very stringent sex offender laws. To give you an example, in New Jersey right now, there's about 16,500 individuals under supervision. About 11,500 of them are individuals convicted of a sex offense. New Jersey puts more individuals on lifetime supervision than any other state per capita. And they also have individuals that are convicted of attempted sex offenses that also result in parole supervision for life. So our population is very concentrated now on the individuals convicted of a sex offense. So we need to make sure that we're providing sex offender treatment, we're providing substance use disorder, mental health. So working with, again, the Department of Human Services Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services, we were able to increase the provision of mental health services. We also worked with Volunteers of America Delaware Valley that opened up a residential program, probably in the worst, for those of you that know Camden, New Jersey, had the negative distinction, unfortunately, of being the most dangerous city in America for many years running. I'm happy to say that it's turned the tide due to county police force and a number of community resources that have come to the table. And now it's a much safer city, but at the time it was very dangerous. And we put it in the most dangerous area within the most dangerous city and have had great results in 2006 in having our most serious and persistently mentally ill individuals participate in those residential services, and then connected to step down, where they would have a trial period in transitional housing. If they did well, they would get supported housing, and they could sign 1-year leases that extended beyond the term of supervision. That's another thing that we focused on. Is it's great to say, wait a minute, they got through parole supervision, so we're good, right? No, because what good have we done if a month later, 2 months later, a day later, they commit another crime, they're back in the criminal justice system? So we support those individuals past their parole expiration date. We also expanded our housing providers from a handful to 250 housing units. Obviously, nothing can be accomplished if the person doesn't have safe and secure housing in a good area of the communities where they're residing. It's just setting someone up for failure if they don't have the basic building block. So I'm very proud to say that in New Jersey, there were no homeless parolees. Colorado, we had about 300. We just didn't have we just didn't have the housing resources to support that. And we worked with the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, as well as the New Jersey agency responsible for housing throughout the state, that we actually had to put our foot in the door, because they when they see us coming, they used to run, because they thought parole was nothing but a headache, and these folks aren't going to do well. They're not going to do well in substance use disorder treatment. We don't necessarily want them there, because, and we said, guess what? You're seeing them anyway. Just because we're bringing them now, they're under supervision. But who better to provide services to than someone that's followed by a parole officer closely and is going to put them on? And if they're not on the right track, while we do it in limited numbers, we'll remove those individuals from society, and they'll be returned through a hearing process if they've committed substantial parole violations, serious and persistent parole violations. So yeah, Department of Community Affairs was big for us. Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And then the intelligent utilization of graduated sanctions. Incarceration is a last resort for individuals that are deemed a threat to public safety. So in 1999, the New Jersey prison population was 31,000. I am extremely proud, and all of the colleagues I work with were extremely proud that we were able to reduce that number from that high. And honestly, had we not, at the crossroads, focused on graduated sanctions and improving the number and locations of community provider agencies, that number would have been, I have no doubt, probably 65 or 75,000 today. Today, it's 13,000. And the grand slam for us was we experienced significant reductions in the uniform crime report reported by the FBI. So in 1999, just to give an example, I was the chief of parole, the parole revocation hearing unit. So I saw these cases firsthand before we had really, as an agency, embraced graduated sanctions, and equally importantly, didn't have the number of day reporting centers, we call them community resource centers in Jersey, and residential programs, increasing those numbers of licensed treatment programs for substance use disorder, and then outpatient mental health programs, as well as housing and community resources that we provided. We returned about 6,000 in 1999. Again, when I left, it was 1,300. So significantly reducing the number of individuals returned to prison for a technical parole violation. And only those technical violations that are deemed the most serious would even result in the issuance of a warrant and the parole revocation hearing process. That's not soft on crime. That's smart on crime. And I will argue to the hilt of anyone that disagrees that the provision of community services I will tell you, I think I had a lot of arguments early in my career with coworkers and folks that didn't think we were on the right path. There's no doubt that what we've done in New Jersey in the last 25 years has made our community safer. We've had more successful individuals under supervision. We're not pulling people back after a couple dirty urines and a couple misreporting dates. We have the resources in place. Colorado was not to the point of New Jersey in terms of that, but we had quite a few resources, like I mentioned. LA Probation, we have a lot of those similar resources. We have a contractor known as Health Right 360 that provides housing, connection to services, ancillary services. Someone gets a job on a construction site, they'll provide the work boots that they might need, or tools. We've provided tools. So across the nation, all states have embraced graduated sanctions, alternatives to incarceration, some better than others. And there's always, this is not a drop the mic job where you're going to feel like mission accomplished, yeah, for today, but tomorrow has a new challenge. So the last thing I'll say is that for those of you pursuing a career in criminal justice, to harken back to the start of the presentation with evidence-based practices, you don't have to review it, the literature, until your eyes are crossed. You really don't, but you do have to understand the basic components of the 8 key elements that I went over, because that will guide you. That's your roadmap to determining how you're going to implement supervision, what services you're going to put in place, and then how to measure the effectiveness of your supervision, the dosage, and then the community providers. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Dave, thank you so much for all of that. I remember years ago working alongside you, us making a lot of changes, especially to those community resource centers. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Bob Dorshimer here in a second, because what they're working on at his agency with their probation officers is very similar to what we did many, many years ago. So it'll be interesting kind of hearing how a lot of this stuff is good stuff, and many people are working on it. So thank you, Dave. Yeah, I hope that you're sticking around for a few minutes. I see a few questions in the chat, and we'll ask those, I think, to all of you. But I want to turn it over to Bob Dorshimer, and I know Anna Miller is also joining in from Mile High Behavioral Healthcare. Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for having me. I'm Bob Dorshimer, the Chief Executive Officer of Mile High Behavioral Healthcare. What a fantastic lead-in, Christopher and Dave. Dave's presentation talking about all the evidence-based practices and how probation and parole really needs to develop some of those plans, and how important it is to have a good community partner that really is in sync for your parolee or probationer. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what a community-based program looks like on the side of when a referral is made from probation or parole. What happens? And we're a community-based organization here in Denver, Colorado. So we're a Wild West state. So our resources in a smaller state is much more finite compared to New Jersey or California. So we have to be very creative, and we have to really think outside the box when it comes to alternatives to incarceration, as well as increasing participation with parole, probation, and problem-solving courts. Yes, problem-solving courts. We'll get into that. It's one of my favorite things. So Mile High Behavioral Healthcare started in 1961. We've been around 60 plus years. We primarily focused on substance use disorder. And over the past, I would say 5 years, we really started seeing things in more of a co-occurring way. And as of 2 years ago, we became a full-fledged community mental health center. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us. Mile High Behavioral Healthcare specializes in a few very key areas. We believe that trying to service absolutely everybody and try to take a dollar and spread it across so many different programs really doesn't give you the good impact that you need for the outcomes that you're looking for. So some of the programs that I'm going to highlight today, that I call them, our boutique services, is our gender-specific program called the Miracles Program. We'll talk about that. That's for women. Then we have our Core to Community program, which we'll talk more extensively about, since this is Crime Waves Symposium. We have a public health arm that wraps around our behavioral health. And then we run a family shelter for those that are unhoused and people living with their children. And we also have a unhoused female veterans unit with children as well. There's only 2 in the country that specialize in veteran women with children that are unhoused. So we're very lucky to be able to provide that service. So let's talk a little bit about Miracles. Miracles started 25 years ago with a magistrate judge and money from JAG, the Justice Assistance Bureau. That money comes from the federal government to do some innovative projects. And we started a drug court. And the Miracles program was really designed 25 years ago to work with, back in the day, people used to say women of the night, prostitution, ladies of the night, and pimps. What we really try to do on East Colfax, where we had a large epidemic and we had a weed and feed grant, which was something very popular in the 90s as well. Justice money that would come into a community, saturate that community with different kind of programs and monies. So this was a weed and seed community. So the Miracles program was birthed in partnership with a problem-solving court, which was our drug court. Had 3 phases to it. The women would graduate from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 graduation. Our program for women was an IOP program. They were with us from 9 to about 4 days a week. And they would go through different stages each day. They would have a different experience. And it would take about 12 months to graduate a program like that. We were in sync with how the drug court worked. So our program and drug court were in sync. And we had an official graduation. So I heard, it's the small celebrations. It's the teaching people how to get into an apartment. It's the bag of popcorn. We just recently heard Dave talk about all these small steps in building success has to be recognized, because many of the people that come to us through the Department of Probation Parole have not had a lot of success in life. They're typically on the fringe of society. They're typically hand to mouth when it comes to food. There's a lot of housing and job insecurity. So our Miracles program is a real strong wraparound approach. It does have a residential treatment component to it for pregnant women specifically. And we have a sobriety house and an aftercare program. So, pretty intense program for women. Our court to community program, I'm going to come up to last and discuss it. Our public health program, we do HIV testing, we do STI testing, we do COVID testing, we do flu testing. We talk about many different harm reduction approaches through our public health arm. What we realized is people were really coming with a lot of intense needs into our community-based mental health center. And they weren't just substance use or mental health or co-occurring. They had a lot of public health and health issues as well. And then the family shelter we discussed. But for all intents and purposes for today's symposium, I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about our Court to Community program, which is one of my favorite programs that I get an opportunity to supervise. And I'm also the chief grant writer and work collaboratively to evaluate and to write for funding for our programs. So as Dave said and Chris said, and as you heard through the symposium, outcomes or KPIs, key indicators for performance is very important. You want to make sure that your care plan, your approach back to the department, we're a community-based provider, so we call it the department, back to the department that we are providing the necessary community supervision, the necessary care plan that will graduate the individual into a successful home environment, work environment, and recovery environment. So there are several different research projects that I have conducted with SAMHSA and JAG and many other community partners, including foundations. We've talked a little bit about the Miracles program today. Denver in Colorado really believes in something called problem-solving courts. Mile High Behavioral Healthcare also believes in problem-solving courts. We're associated with, oh gosh, maybe 10 problem-solving courts. They are drug court, family integrated drug court. We just started an adolescent drug court, veterans, homeless court, warrant forgiveness court, mental health court. It goes on down the list of problem solving courts with magistrate judges, and we partner with those communities. One of the programs that I'm pretty excited to talk about today, it's a SAMHSA funded program under the Centers for Treatment, and it's called Positively You. What the Positively You program is trying to do is evaluate a approach, and our research partners, as you heard from Dave and Chris, you really need a good research arm. And our institution that we use here locally is University of Denver School of Social Work. They have an excellent research arm that helps evaluate our work. So that's our evaluation partner. But back to Positively You, what we are researching is how to increase the attendance and compliance with a problem-solving court. What do you need to do to help the probationer increase attendance, increase their communication with their probation officer and their magistrate judge? Problem-solving courts are quite intense. There's a lot of appearance. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a graduation that happens at the end of this. So we really wanted to evaluate the problem-solving court model. But most importantly, we thought a nice research project would be, what if we invited the department to the community-based provider, us, Mile High Behavioral Healthcare, and that the check-in that takes place for the judge and for probation actually happens in the clinical setting. So this is a real trauma-informed based program. Our people feel safe. This is where they do their group. This is where they're doing their rehab. Everybody gets fed. We have a food pantry. So it's a really safe environment for them. And going to the department can be a barrier. Going to the problem-solving court to see magistrate judge can be scary, to talk about maybe some mishaps that have happened through the treatment process. So we wanted to evaluate and research the effectiveness and the compliance and see what the increases were in the connectivity between probation parole, the problem-solving magistrate judge, and treatment by putting the care team together in one setting, which is our offices. We do that one day a week on Wednesdays is check-ins, so it's a very busy time. We have probation officers all over hallways on keyboards and people walking up to different podiums and checking in, and different small meetings taking place throughout the organization, talking about how people are doing in group, how they're doing on their BAs, which is a breathalyzer, UAs, urinalysis. We also provide medication-assisted treatments, so our mental health nurse practitioner is there as well. And what I'm proud to say today, and it's not necessarily a new concept, but it's very a new concept for us here in Colorado. The coasts are, as you know, usually pretty well funded and more advanced. We are seeing about 80% jump in success when it comes to people showing up on a Wednesday, excited to talk about their progress in treatment. They've built trusting relationships with their parole officer, probation officer. They are actually showing up to court to tell magistrate judge, look how good I am doing. And it's really showing to be that if you take the department and you take a community-based provider and you have a good working team together, the outcomes for both of our patients um, are pretty tremendous. And I would say our graduation rate is probably closer to 85%. So when you're dealing with folks that have behavioral health issues, are involved in the criminal justice system, living in a hand to mouth, uh, job insecurity, housing insecurity, tough political environment, tough work environment, when you have so much going against you and you're 85% successful in treatment, which means you're giving up meth, you're giving up crack, you're giving up 40 ounces, you're giving up smoking blunts, you're giving up dealing, you're giving up pimping, you're giving up prostitution, you're working towards recovery, you're working towards compliance with your care plan. When you really think about what a patient goes through to enter into a rehab community-based mental health center that is criminal justice minded like we are, and you're attending a problem-solving court, I'm not sure many people involved in this symposium could do it. I think it's a really, really big accomplishment. And I watch these people cry. I watch these people go through withdrawals. I watch these people also have very successful and happy clean days. We celebrate 3 days, 4 days, 1 day, a week, 2 weeks, 30 days. We continue to build upon success. Mile High's treatment principle is four-pronged approach. Every patient that comes to Mile High, and this is an expensive model, by the way, gets a therapist, a case manager, somebody with lived experience that graduated our programs and graduated problem-solving courts, so someone with lived experience, a peer, and of course, our medical arm. So it's a real true wraparound approach. All of our programs have that wraparound approach. We do an official graduation every year. Most of our people have never graduated or walked across a stage. We do the caps and gowns. We give a recovery diploma out so they can get housing, employment, and show that they've completed really major milestones in their life. Their families trust them again and come back. So the other thing that's important about Positively You that we're researching is it's not all just about the IP, the identified patient. So the identified patient comes from a home, comes from a husband or wife, a grandparent. There's family around this individual. And what many courts and probation and treatment providers like myself have a history of doing is just treating the IP, but doesn't really take a look at the family system and what's going on within the family system and how do we create good boundaries for someone that's in treatment, parole, how do we support the family. So we're also researching inviting self-identified family members or supporters of the patient so that way when they leave our care they have a natural support system that understands what they've went through, what recovery is. So we do a lot of education and we do community dinners for the community of Mile High Behavioral Healthcare. And we have these big family suppers where 50, 60 families show up once a month. And we do some table topics, nothing heavy, but table topics like what is recovery? What is dropping a UA? Why is it kind of triggering when dad comes home from work and wants to smoke a blunt? He's not on probation, but son is on probation in a problem solving court. How do you build in safeties around recovery? So we really have those conversations with families and we really try to build in normality into not shaming dad or mom for, having a glass of wine or doing that or this or the other. But we really try to help the family identify what a new kind of operating rule they can have together to support their loved one. and how to make sure that their loved one doesn't go deeper into the criminal justice system. We find that to be highly successful. We're still researching it out. Our graduation rates, as I said, are in the 85 percentile. Our rate with success working with problem solving courts and inviting in folks like probation, parole, even the magistrates like to show up now when they don't have a docket. They like to come in and drop by groups and just make themselves seen and present. And that shows them more in a humanistic realm. But at the same time, you also get to feel that authority when magistrate judge shows up in the community and shakes hands and says, I've heard some really good things. And that just goes through the agency like wildfire, like, wow, Billy just got a handshake from one of the toughest problem solving court judges. And, other people really look to have that handshake too and wait now for Wednesdays. So Wednesdays is so popular now. Um, Lastly, what I wanted to talk about is a new concept I have going that we're researching out. We took principles from the ACT model, assertive community treatment, and I took principles of the ACT model and created another reentry program. So we talked about Positively You, and this program is called the Huddle. It literally, the way it sounds, is literally what it is. So it's studying what a full approach would look like. So what does that mean? We have housing case management, employment case management, a peer, a case manager, a clinician, and medical. So it is a team of 6 professionals that comes together and huddles around one person. So these are more high acuity. These are also the Huddle program is really designed for 18 to 26-year-olds. So kind of high acuity, first time, just got caught, just, getting involved in problem solving, just getting involved on probation, starting to head down a very intense path. So the Huddle is a very intense program with a very intense wraparound approach to start solving some of those housing issues that are triggers, employment issues, being underemployed, working on undiagnosed mental health issues that could be driving substance use disorders and self-medications, and then peeling everything back and looking to see, is there a diagnosis? Is there an underlying mental health disorder that is not being addressed? So we are in the midst with the University of Denver and the state of Colorado and problem solving courts now evaluating our second research effort. So Positively You is bringing in services from probation and parole. And then the Huddle is about a high intensity wraparound for first time offenders and first time individuals that are younger. We've expanded recently the Huddle program for 50 plus because magistrate judge came to us and said, look, I've got 50-year-olds that I have seen for the past 20 to 25 years on my docket, and I've put them away and I've put them in the Denver County Jail and I've sent them to treatment. And by golly, they are still using and we know each other on a first name basis. Can you expand the Huddle to this population? I want to give one last chance to, because they have violated parole, they have done so many different things, and now they're really facing pretty long-term time. So we opened it up to the 50 plus crowd, and of course, they're biker guys, tough guys, been through rehab, been through it all. So they kind of show up in our community-based clinic, middle fingers up, the the real character, and they're super a lot of fun. While we've been wildly successful with the 50 plus group of men, we've created a dinner group. So they've already been through groups, they've been through AA, they've served time. So we created a men's group, and we have 4 men's groups now because we can't have enough men's groups, and they are dinner groups, and the men are fed really nice meals. They come in, do a lot of evidence-based communication and talking, but they really feed off of each other. They really talk about, what the next step in their life is. They have grandchildren now. And they really are taking a strong look at what the next chapter of their life is. But they haven't been given that opportunity simply because of ageism in behavioral health. There aren't a lot of services for 50 plus, 60 plus. They are involved in the justice system. And we're doing really well. And we're pretty excited to be researching the 50 plus crowd in the huddle model as well. And then once in a while, we'll mix the 2 groups together so the young guy can see what an older guy looks like, and the older guy can kind of say back in group, you don't want this to be you 26 years from now, kind of doing the same thing, and having these relationships and watching your parole or probation officer retire because you've been with them that long, or the magistrate judge retire. That's been the kind of latest joke is magistrate judge is getting ready to retire and has a handful of people that they would love to see graduate and not be a part of the system. So there's a lot of great things that can take place with community partnerships, with your problem-solving courts, your probation, your parole, your different reentry programs, depending on how your state is set up. If you're looking for a career in criminal justice, I would definitely say take your electives and understand what behavioral health is and understand what behavioral health isn't. I think behavioral health is a key wraparound approach for a successful discharge from parole and probation. I think housing and food and nutrition is key. So I really believe in our approach for Positively You, and I really believe that the huddle, these are all really proven successful programs. I've had to add staff, by the way, in their very tough times. Most of our patients, 95% of our patients are 300 or 100 up to 300% below poverty. So 95% of our patients are Medicaid. So if that gives you an idea of what type of organization we are a very grassroots in the community, where we put our agency. We are in the working class communities, directly providing those services. So wanted to share a few positive research efforts in the behavioral health reentry world. We've been doing this at Mile High for many years. We're in another really fantastic project for 25 years, which is called the RISE program. These are in county jails where you're working with offenders with DUIs, and you're really trying to decrease drinking and the dangers of what drinking and driving can do. So we have a contract with the Denver County Jail. The RISE program comes from back east. Something definitely look into. That's another really great evidence-based wraparound model that takes place actually in-house in the county jail. We actually go in and provide all of those services, and then we provide all the services when they leave house and come to the community-based setting. So I would love questions related to behavioral health, from talking about women's services to 18 to 24 to 50 plus. And by the way, our organization serves the LGBTQ plus program. We operate a transgender center as well. They all have needs when it comes to being involved in a criminal justice system. So we advocate for all of our patients through all of the rainbow colors. And we are definitely very grassroots. So that being said, I would welcome questions, and I look forward to answering some behavioral health reentry designed. Go for it. I love this part.
Thank you so much for this. Yeah, let's hear if there's any questions out there. I did see a couple things pop up, and I'm going to start off. I have a question because one of the last things you talked about was having to hire more staff, and I'm curious from both you and also Dave Wolfsgruber, what are you looking for in employees, and like what kind of jobs are there in your agencies?
Yeah, I'll jump into the behavioral health side. Um, we do hire people straight out of school. So that's also one of my favorite things is hiring a brand new bachelor level person that has a minor in criminal justice, a BA in behavioral health, or it can be in reverse. They qualify to be case managers for us. And then we certainly like to hire master level people that have the same kind of academic chemistry, if you will. So we're really looking for people that aren't interested in wearing stiletto heels, ties, suits. We're really looking for someone that wants to show up in a pair of jeans, shoes. We're an experiential organization, so you might be doing some walking with your patient, some gardening, some rock climbing, some goat and yoga therapy. You might be doing some cooking classes. So we're very experiential when it comes to our therapy because many of the people that come to us, Chris, have really big life needs. And if you don't solve some of the life needs, they kind of get in the way of treatment. So we're looking for people that are willing to work kind of outside the box and really enjoy sharing what your talents are. If you're a rock climber, if you're a gardener, if you're a cook, if you learned how to pickle and you know how to pickle everything, and we have a garden. So we're really looking for someone that wants to roll up their sleeves and be innovative with us, not be afraid of research, not be afraid to fail, learn from your mistakes, listen to your patients, and learn what works and doesn't work. So we're really looking for someone that's rear-minded and has got a passion for helping make change.
I have a follow-up question for you before I go to Dave. Do you hire certified recovery support specialists or known as peer specialists?
Yeah, we do. So that's part of our four-pronged approach. We do hire our graduates back. We do hire some folks from the community as well. We have a certification program here in Colorado. So if you've yet gotten your certification, we also pay for certifications to send people to school. But absolutely, we think one of the pillars of treatment is not just having the great therapist, and not the greatest case manager, but it actually takes a peer, someone that's walked in their shoes, somebody that's been to the big house, so to speak, somebody that's graduated. So I know it's going to sound a little simple, Christopher, but I'm going to use the metaphor of a burger. And, Smash Burger comes from Colorado. I know you guys have In-N-Out out there in California. It's not all that wonderful, but I'm going to talk about the Smash Burger. But, treatment is the meat of what this is all about. And all of the ancillary services are the bun that makes the hamburger. So that is the complete package that I like to say in a simplistic way. So case management and recovery are those buns, and that really makes the whole dinner, and that makes the whole thing successful for someone is that wrap approach.
Do you know offhand if someone's trained by NAMI, and they're certified out of Illinois, can they get certified in Colorado? Do you know anything about that?
Reciprocity is a tricky thing with Colorado. So you would apply to DORA, and you would show DORA and your employer what your certificates and background and your educational background, and we would work together to apply to DORA to see if there's reciprocity between those states. Sometimes it's just a course you need to take. Sometimes it's a little bit more than a course you need to take. And unfortunately, sometimes our state won't take anything from another state, depending on if the receiving state doesn't really have a lot of policies and procedures on how you were trained. So Colorado has been professionalizing the industry, and our licensure, so to speak, Chris, has increased. So it's reciprocity is harder to get now because we expect more.
Well, thank you for that. Dave, what about for you? What are you looking for, and what kind of jobs do you guys have at a probation department?
So for our sworn staff, and this cuts across New Jersey, Colorado, and Los Angeles County, that does require a bachelor's degree, but this might be heresy for me to say this on the Chicago school webinar, but we've had to rethink, and I'll say we came close in Colorado to removing the bachelor's degree requirement and replacing with a mix of education and experience. So we would accept, say, 60 college credits. We got very close to the Department of Personnel, and then they basically shut the door in our face when we thought we had turned a corner, because we're just not getting enough candidates. We're competing with, I'll just start with Colorado and then I'll progress to Los Angeles. We're competing with Denver Sheriff's Department, which has a starting salary of $90,000 a year. We're competing with multiple sheriff's departments, but Denver is kind of the largest employer and the most commonly recognized sheriff's department, the largest sheriff's department. We're also dealing with police departments that have lowered their education requirements to a high school diploma, GED, and 21. So we really had to pivot and think, like, how are we going to compete? We can't compete salary-wise. We're still requiring the 4-year degree, and not to minimize any I am as big a proponent as anyone for education, but we also have to be realistic in that we're not able to hire qualified candidates. We're just not.
Dave, I always thought it was interesting how it's sometimes difficult to get folks in probation and parole because, it's such a unique role. It's nothing like a sheriff's department. And when I talk to students, I think the number one job I hear students say they want to do is criminal profiling. And I think that's most of what probation and parole is, right? It's risk assessments. It's profiling that offender to determine what types of services, resources, supervision, everything. And for folks who were like, hey, I want to go into criminal profiling, I'm like, have you checked out probation and parole? You're not going to get that in the sheriff's department.
Christopher, I'm sorry. I want to jump in real quick. I just attended an AI summit, and part of the AI summit was talking about criminal profiling and having AI take over some of this stuff. So, I think that could be our next crime wave symposium too, is how is AI going to affect parole, probation, problem-solving course, because it's significantly affecting behavioral health. So there's a lot of AI questions, but I'm sorry, I digress, but I just think AI is a really big part of this conversation.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be having a lot more conversation about this. Absolutely.
Well, Dave, talk a little bit about the civilian world of supporting our officers, and that's our case managers. Parole in New Jersey just hired case managers to assist in connecting those services because officers are busy, and Chris knows firsthand as a former officer, having to do home visits and office visits and drug tests and go into the community and work with community providers, filing cases, filing criminal charges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Officers don't have that time. So case managers that require a bachelor's degree. We also have parole counselors working in the institutions, because in New Jersey parole, we have parole counselors that work in the Department of Corrections facilities in preparing individuals for release, doing the calculations and all that. But I'll give you the starkest example I can give you in pay disparity, and that's Colorado California Highway Patrol. They start at $123,000 a year. So there's no competing with that. And they require a GED, high school diploma, or 21. So Chris and I have a mutual acquaintance that I won't mention, but this particular individual has been the most phenomenal staff member I work with that unfortunately for life reasons didn't get her degree. But, had she been able to, she would have been a doctor, a lawyer, would have graduated at the top of her class. But it's just one symbol that education, while we believe it's extremely important, it's not everything when it comes to factors to consider hiring individuals. And then we're up against it with, last thing I'll say on this is I was born at the tail end of the baby boomer generation. So I'm giving up my age, sort of 45 to 65. So I was outside of that, but close. I had unbelievable competition in the positions that I applied for. There's more people in the job market. Folks overlook that when there's less nurses, there's less family doctors, there's less criminal justice practitioners. There's a ton more IT jobs that people are gravitating to because they love to work remote. And who works remote more than IT professionals? So there's so many more attractive, high-paying jobs that law enforcement is lower on the totem pole. And I'm not even going to get into the public sentiment surrounding law enforcement. That it's not a popular profession any longer. So I'll stop on that.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I think folks hearing about these different job opportunities, especially, when we talk about criminal justice, people think cops, courts, and corrections. They don't think of behavioral health. They don't think I just studied criminology and I have a psychology, part of my forensic psychology specialization. So I know about risk assessments and substance abuse. They don't think about going into behavioral health as a case manager or going on and like our school has, we have both a forensic psychology and a clinical mental health counseling program that leads to licensure. So those things are even great if you want to become a probation or parole officer, right? Having that background in how to do risk assessments, how to understand substance use. So those are all kind of things that we try to talk to our students about. I have another question for you. This is something I've seen both of you guys do in New Jersey and Bob in Denver there, having probation officers, parole officers on site at these treatment centers like the CRCs, and Bob at your probation departments. Have you seen that, I guess, from both perspectives? What do you think the officers and the staff think about having those folks there? And what do you think about the clients having their supervising officers on site?
Chris, that's a fantastic question, and I appreciate something Dave just said. It's kind of hard to talk about the perception of parole, probation, and law enforcement right now. So, of course, I wrote these two grants with the George Floyd situation in mind. Also, the mass exodus we had to do during COVID and what that did to crime when we did early release because of COVID. And then I also had to worry about bringing in parole, probation into our settings when they weren't seen very well because of everything that was going on in society. So was I causing more trauma? What triggers was I getting ready to create? So I certainly talked about all the positive things, but there were some important rebuilding of the relationships and bringing back the humanness between individuals. So what we've found is it's actually more successful to come to community, because right now community keeps on saying, we want to be heard, we want to be seen. And it's not just the probationer, it's the mom, the wife of the probationer, it's the grandparents that are showing up now. So there's a lot of people showing up saying, to treatment providers, parole, probation on Wednesdays, make sure you're doing right by my child, make sure you're doing right by my grandson. And when they get to know that your intentions are good and that you're a good-hearted person and you're not the boogeyman that you've been portrayed to be, you see success happen. So I think we need to start getting back into community. Even behavioral health people need to get back out of our offices and in community and start shaking hands again, and making yourself known. So I think it's a really exciting time in the career. And if you're into building coalitions, building community, it's what the Denver Police Department has moved towards now. We're discussing community policing at a much higher level now. Most of the departments of parole, probation, magistrate judges are coming to community fairs and resource fairs. So long answer short, I think it's successful, and I think we need to be doing more of it.
Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's vital that we have officers, the right officers at the programs, because if someone's not invested, and we've gone through this, where we didn't have a person that was really interested, they kind of got tired of field work. So, hey, let me just apply to be a community resource center, or commonly known throughout the country as day reporting center officer, or they go into our residential programs, because in New Jersey parole, we had about 800 beds to provide residential services and programming. It has to be the right officer. It just can't be an escape from field work, or an escape from home visits, or escape from having to do urines, which isn't the most glamorous thing in parole work or probation work. So the right officer that's committed and works collaboratively with the program and participates in case management sessions, doesn't just be the heavy that the person calls in if the person's raising their voice or they need someone to impose discipline. That is a true partner in the process that participates in the case management portion of it. Whether it's, daily, weekly, whatever the frequency is, that officer needs to be there as well. And the discharge plan, because a lot of our clients, especially our SO population, is on supervision for life. So it's I hate the term warm handoff, because that's almost like a drop the mic, I'm done, you're next, kind of a transition, that they stay with the transition into a field office to make sure that the programming they participated in is transferred over to the program, and then any input that they can provide to that officer that's going to receive that individual once they complete the day reporting center program.
You talked about sex offenders there for a moment, and there was a question earlier when you were talking about sex offenders and how many of them are under supervision in New Jersey in particular. Why is there so much effort? And I think the question was, why are we spending a lot of money for pedophiles and for these, creepy people? Why is there so much effort put into those folks?
Well, it's important, and I'll just go on the New Jersey. I'll stay with New Jersey because of the mention of the high number of those under supervision. Very few fit the category of what the commenter indicated, pedophile. A lot of our SOs, and this is not to diminish the true harm that they've caused to their victims, and not to diminish their conduct. But in New Jersey, the spectrum is wide. It is from your worst child predators to, I'll take the most extreme to the least extreme, where it's consensual. And then I'll use the example of the consensual, and then the parents get upset and they end up filing charges, and the person ends up most likely not serving any jail time, but immediately being sentenced to supervision for life. Why should we invest? We want to make sure these individuals aren't reoffending. So first of all, you want to reinvest in programming. You want to get them linked to sex offender treatment so that they're not committing one of the most heinous crimes that we deal with. And you also want to make sure that they're being monitored and followed and placed under supervision in an appropriate manner to make sure that their risk of recidivism is reduced, that we're applying the appropriate dosage, and we're identifying what their needs may be outside of sex offender counseling, substance use disorder. Mental health is a big part with that population, and cognitive behavioral treatments to understand the true harm that they've had. And then the group dynamic, that can't be minimized, because a lot of the successful sex offender treatment that is available nationwide is group therapy, where it's a check and balance within the group. It's the group dynamic that kind of checks people's conduct, both within the group when the group, if they're not participating fully, or some of them that how the way they're acting in the community. So, and I think anyone that's worked with the SO population will know that when you're dealing with them, they are the quickest to dime someone out if they're not doing something appropriate. So that dynamic sometimes, and it's always seems it's negatively perceived as snitching, but it does help the treatment provider and under supervision, that there's that check and balance where person A is going to indicate to the officer or the program that person B is doing something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I remember all that stuff firsthand, working in the sex crimes unit for many, many years. We only have a few moments left, but I have one last question. I think it's really, really important to ask both of you. If you told us about what you're working on right now, is there something that you need? What if you could have something? What is your biggest need? Is it better technology? Is it better employees that you could hire? Is it better training for officers? Is it more grant money or more money? Is it more mental health services for the staff? Like, what is the need that you have at both of your agencies that would make a big difference?
I think in behavioral health, when we are graduating and nearing the end of treatment and nearing the end of parole and probation, and you have so much success with your patient, I think what is really key that we believe we need more of is appropriate and supportive employment. Employment brings so much dignity, and working is so rewarding, and it helps create your own destiny and your own decisions. So work is so important, and then having a place to lay your head at night after you come home from work. So I really believe housing and supportive employment. And what I mean by supportive employment is supportive employers that understand, but at the same time, they also have employee assistance programs for when the person who has some mental health issues and some recovery issues, they have some good days, they have some bad days, but generally they are really good employees. How do you not take those days and really mark somebody up when they're generally doing really well? So, supportive employment means they also need training on hiring our people. But I definitely think employment and housing is a really important next step for us as a community partner. We need more community partners with housing and employment opportunities that aren't afraid of our people.
That's a really good point. Thanks for adding that. Dave, do you have anything that you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, I'll sum it up pretty quickly. Staffing is a concern across the country, and to be able to hire and then retain individuals, not a swipe at the younger folks, but it's a fact that individuals have many more jobs in their lifetime than we had as Gen Xers. So it's very difficult if someone is experiencing some difficulties with the job, whether they're in a juvenile hall, adult facility, and the kind of what I've observed for a number of years now is not sticking with it and just moving to the next thing because the grass is always greener in their minds. And I think that comes with two things. I think it's changing the thought process that this is going to happen. I think it's giving our staff the understanding that bad things could happen. You're going to see some bad things, and really not to scare them away from the profession, but to give them a dose of reality before they go on a housing unit or on a tier or in more dangerous facilities, to understand fully the job they're getting in during the academy process. And then also understanding that when they encounter that, for us as peers, coworkers, if you want to, if they have some mentors, I don't like the term mentor myself, just because it gives a lofty, just someone you can bounce things off, or someone with experience that is partnered with that new employee to counsel them, almost like a peer support, to ensure that they have the feedback they need to say, like, hey, listen, I've been here 15 years. It's going to get better. You have a lot more good days than bad. And, I'm sorry this happened to you, but stay with it. This is a great career. Instead of, the retention issues that we have now across the country. Colorado is a great example of that. We've made some strides in hiring, but our retention was abysmal until we implemented some of the peer support mechanisms and the right people to provide that support. And the similar is going on in California in LAPD, or excuse me, LA probation, in that we're not able to retain to the degree that we'd like.
Dave Wolfsgruber, Bob Dorshimer, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is, each topic we talked about this week was important, but this is just so important. It's the end part of the criminal justice system that is often forgotten, and probably one of the most important pieces of protecting the community and trying to prevent more crime and trying to help those individuals fix behaviors, fix patterns, fix things going on in their lives that they need so that they cannot return back to criminal behavior. It's such a big piece of the justice system. So thank you for ending our Crime Waves event. I appreciate everyone who attended, and we will see you again maybe next year for Crime Waves 2027. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.